When I was in high school, during my senior year, I was a teacher's assistant for a gym class. This was great for me because I've always liked sports and athletics. I was the assistant for a teacher, Mr. Robertson, who had been my personal favorite gym teacher. Being an assistant for him was great because occasionally I would get to play the games the class was playing with them. Other times, I would do actual work, like help set things up or help to grade a few assignments that the class had. The class was the second hour for me, and one day we were going to play kickball. We used those large mats that can fold up as bases, and Mr. Robertson asked me to go get some from the storage closet when class started. This was a bit of a trek. The storage closet was outside of the gym and a ways down 2 different hallways. It was pretty inconvenient, but our school was sort of old, so off I went to get the 3 mats. Luckily, they had those flat carts, so you could just wheel the equipment in, and that made things a lot easier. I got to the end of the hallway, which didn't have any classrooms attached to it, and was only used for storage rooms. Then I opened the storage closet and looked inside. Once inside, I saw inside the dark, cluttered closet and turned on the light. Turning on the light switch didn't do a whole lot of good, and it was still pretty dim in there, but it was better than before. I looked around the room until I found the mats. When I went to grab them though, I suddenly and clearly saw some random guy come out from behind a large box. This guy had long stringy hair and a baggy short-sleeved shirt on. I turned and ran out of the room, closing the door behind me. When I made it outside of the room, for some reason, I had it in my mind to hide in one of the other storage rooms in that hallway. Looking back, I wish I would have just ran all the way back to the gym, because I probably could have outran that guy, but it was sort of a long ways, and for whatever reason, I quickly found a storage room, got inside, and hid. I heard the door to the storage closet open like 5 seconds after I hid. I then quickly went behind some large object that I couldn't see because it was pitch black in there, and then held my breath. I was careful not to make a sound. I heard footsteps walk out into the hallway and get closer. The footsteps slowly continued walking, and then they got quieter. It sounded like they passed by the room that I was hiding in, but I couldn't quite tell. I took my phone out of my pocket and quickly turned the brightness down. Then, I attempted to text one of my friends what was going on, but I had no signal in there. I wanted to leave, but I had absolutely no idea where the guy was now. I sat there waiting and trying to hear some kind of noise to indicate where this guy was. However, I wasn't hearing anything at all. I thought about going back to class, but every time that I did, I just kept picturing the guy waiting right outside the door for me. The real problem was that I had no way of contacting anybody to tell them what was going on. I stayed there. I don't know how long I was there, but eventually, I heard over the intercom outside in the hallway that there was a lockdown going on. I figured somebody must have seen that guy, but was he far away from me now, or was he still right over here? I was banking on him being far away, and I decided that I could leave now. I got up from my hiding spot and took a few steps towards the door. But literally right when I was about to open it, I heard footsteps coming my way. I didn't know whose they were, but given the fact that the school was under a lockdown, I figured it was that guy again. I stopped where I was and tried to be silent. The footsteps walked closer and closer at a fast and steady pace. Eventually, they reached me, but passed by the room that I was in. I was pretty scared at that time, and I did not want to leave anymore. I slowly and quietly made my way back into my hiding place. Some time went by before I once again heard footsteps. They were coming from the same direction that the guy had came from before. This time, the footsteps got right outside the room that I was in, and then it opened. Light poured into the room, and I saw a police officer stood in the doorway. I was really glad to see him, and I ran out of the room. He told me that they knew where the other guy was hiding, and that I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I was returned to my class, who was locked down inside the gym. The guy was caught a short time later. Looking back at this, it was the scariest moment of my high school career. I really don't know how the guy got inside the school, but I'm glad everyone was okay. In my freshman year of high school, during the first semester, I had a civics class as my last class of the day. The school that I went to was pretty average size, I would say. I remember the class that I was in had about 20 kids in it. It was a couple of months into the school year at this point, and on this Thursday afternoon, we were all just listening to the teacher go through some announcements, when suddenly the phone in the classroom rang. The teacher, Mrs. Lindstrom, walked over and answered it. Then she hung up and told us all that the school was going under a lockdown. She seemed pretty serious and told us that this was not a drill. She locked her classroom door and then turned out the lights and instructed us to the back end of the classroom. We all got up from our desks and went to the back. There was a lot of whispering going on, but nobody seemed to know why we were under a lockdown. The longer we all sat back there, the more concerned everyone seemed to get, which made me start to worry. I started thinking of all the possibilities of what could be going on. It got really quiet after a while, and at one point we heard footsteps going down the hallway, but we didn't know whose they were. The lockdown went on for probably 30 more minutes before there was another call to the classroom announcing that the lockdown had been ended. We returned to class for the final 15 minutes or so, but the only thing on my mind was what could have caused it. School was dismissed after that, and I left school to get on my bus. When I got outside the school, I noticed several police cars with flashing lights. Everyone was talking about the lockdown, and I heard several rumors about what it was. But it wasn't until later that night where I got the real answer. My friend Robbie, whose mother worked at the school, told me that the lockdown had been caused by a student who claimed to see a strange man wandering the halls. However, after an extensive search of the school, one of the back doors was seen to be open, and it was determined that the man had left. The area was briefly searched, but the man was never found. The next day, when I went back to school, everything seemed to be pretty normal, and by the time I got to third hour, I had forgotten all about what had happened the day before. It was a Friday, so I was pretty much just excited to go to the football game that night. In the middle of my third hour class, which was history, I had to go to the bathroom. I knew the teacher was one of the nicer ones who didn't require a pass or anything, so I just asked and she allowed me to go. I walked down the halls of the bathrooms, which are towards the end. As soon as I opened the door and got inside, I came face to face with a man who I had never seen before. He was wearing a winter hat and had long black hair and a small beard. He looked really surprised to see me. We both stood there staring at each other for a second or two. Then the man came towards me and I turned and ran. I ran back to class. When I got back, I told my teacher what I had seen, and the school once again went on another lockdown. This time we stayed locked down for over an hour. I was terrified, but finally it ended, and afterwards everyone was allowed to go home early. They told us the man had finally been caught, but what I don't understand is how they didn't find him the first time the school was locked down, and what he was doing inside there in the first place.